Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Jonas. Jonas and I are going to talk about internal and external communications, how that works. First of all, we've got a number of people that are watching. If anybody wants to ask a question, Jonas is more than happy to take questions. He admits he may not know the answer, but he's happy to take the questions. Happy to keep this interactive. But before we go any further, Jonas, tell people where they can get hold of you.
They can get hold of me on Twitter by using my name BLADT77. So now I have revealed how old I am, and then they can get hold of me on LinkedIn just by writing my name, Jonas Bladt Hansen, or they can send me a mail on jonas@inversus.dk.
Okay,
yeah,
fantastic. So you've had an interesting journey in terms of internal comms. Can you give us a brief overview of what your journey's been today?
Yeah, so you could say I have a broad background in strategy, organizational psychology, and leadership. That's actually my educational background. But I quite quickly ended up in the internal communication space, where I worked in Danish Rail for, I think it was 6 or 7 years, and then I went to Arla Foods, and I guess you might know that company. Maybe Cravendale is ringing a bell, but it's the dairy industry. And I spent 5 years over there as well. So as partly as a director of communications. So yeah, that's basically my background, I think, from the internal comms space, and I've always tried to see if we could push the limits a bit in how we do things.
And you sent me once a slideshare document from a project that you worked on. So share that with us.
Yeah, that was the one from Danish Rail at that time. I think it's back from 2010 actually. That was just when Facebook, it took off, and we thought that it could be interesting to try to develop an internal social media platform. And at that time, people didn't really know what to do with such a platform internally. So it was a great experience, and we tried to build it around the company's values, and we wanted to engage people, especially on the front line, to share their experiences on what do they actually do when they try to be, what was one of the values was I think was being trustworthy or something. And so we wanted to get them on board and try to tell the stories on what they actually do out there. And then we would, in the internal comms department, we would actually try to amplify some of the stories inside the organization. So I think that's basically also where it starts, and it also, today also when we talk about what can we do to inspire people instead of informing people, I think that was actually the first project that I was working on, where we tried to.
And where could people find that?
The presentation.
Yeah.
I think we can share the link on.
Okay, if you send me the link, I'll put it in the.
I can do that afterwards. Yeah, it actually took me some time to find it myself, but it's
okay, right. It's not like a Google search.
Yeah.
So what is explain to me what is internal external communications? Give me the background to that.
Where we're going?
Yeah, what is it? So rather not where we're going yet, I'll ask that'll be the next question. But
I think what it is, it's an interesting question, because what is it not? I mean, communication in organizations is you could define it as being everything that's going on. So things that are being communicated, not communicated, they are actually communication. So I think a way. And I think that's one of the challenges we have in the communication space, is that how can we actually where do we define what is external communication, what is internal communication actually? And it's I think we live in a world where these boundaries are, you could say, blurred.
I think COVID-19 has done that. You can see that I'm working from home. I'm not in an office. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. and it's constantly being challenged on what we should be looking at and what we shouldn't be looking at. Previously, I think it's before, let's say, before the social media, before we had social media, it was a bit clearer to us what it is, what our responsibilities were. So for the external part, it would be to make sure that stakeholders, external stakeholders, would know about what are we doing, would be informed about how we're performing and all these kind of things.
So you'd be sending press releases,
timely information about the company, and then we would have some campaigns as well, maybe from the PR department, and internal comms people would be focused on informing employees about things that would be going on in the corporate newspaper or the intranet that we might have at that we would have at that time. And I think after social media came and the internet and so on, I think these things have really been challenged.
How do you see it now? I mean, we're living in a COVID-19 world.
Yeah.
We're living in an ability for any of us to get on the internet. Use mobile, social media.
Yeah.
I can go on the line and tell people what the results are of the company before they're published.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
For us. So I think one of the I've tried to define 3 areas that things that where I can see that this is going, and the first thing I always say is that we're moving away from producing stuff to actually producing content to facilitating conversations. That's one of the things that we are that we are challenged, or that we should be doing or focusing on. And the second thing is, and that's actually the first time I'm trying to say that today, actually. But we're moving away from producing corporate content.
Yeah.
So let's call it human content.
Yep.
No, previously I've said it's like we're producing, or we should be doing more authentic communication. But I think authentic might be the wrong word.
I think authentic is overused, yes.
Yeah,
but human, yes.
Yeah. So it's more about human being show empathy and being empathetic, being able to listen, being able to actually have human interactions instead of producing a lot of corporate stuff people don't want to read or listen to, or whatever it is that we put out there. That's the other thing, and that is I think in many ways that is the most challenging part, actually. Because organizations, they are set up to being corporate and efficient, and that's the way you work today, is by producing a piece of content and then try to figure out where should we put that content.
I think that what happens is that we're in a situation where every company says, "Buy my product because we're great."
Yeah.
And when I say every company, that's every company in the world. So it just becomes blurred and lost, and it's differentiated.
Yeah.
Now I was told, from the word go, that when I first started in sales was that you needed to be different. Hence the reason, when people come away from this program, they'll go, there was that guy in an orange shirt, and that's a differential, rather than we could have all come on here with grey shirts on. I'm not trying to. But that's the thing. Companies are basically zebras in a herd of zebras.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of astounding to see sometimes also on social media, because it feels a bit like they are a bit, you could say maybe impatient, or maybe even panicking a bit, because they can see that there are others out there doing stuff, and then they want to be in front of the people. Then they, spend a lot of money on advertising or boosting their stuff and whatever that it takes to generate views. But that's not. I mean, it doesn't matter if people see it. They want to engage with. They want to, they want to engage with real people today. I don't think.
Yes, I mean, people. Let's take this here. You went to LinkedIn, you posted that you were talking today.
Yeah.
And people have come on here to see you.
Yeah.
They may even not know who you work for, and they probably don't care. And that's the point. They're here to see you.
Yeah.
And that's the same. The company's unique selling points are their employees.
Yeah.
And what people don't want to see is an employee saying, "Buy my product because it's great," because they're going to say that because they're paid for it.
Yeah.
What they're looking for them is for them to yes, they're going to say, they're going to be an advocate for a product because it pays their mortgage and puts food on the table. But, you know, you could be talking about sustainability. You could be talking about working from home. You could be talking about, so, you know, one of our clients, one of the salespeople, he's not a trained marketeer. He's not a trained marketeer. He put a post about himself, about the fact that lockdown, he got an extra 90 minutes a day because he normally commutes 45 minutes into London and back again. So he's able to spend an extra 90 minutes a day with his family. That got more engagement than the whole of what the marketing team spent on paid media for the last quarter. One post, which was free on LinkedIn.
Makes totally sense to me. I mean,
sorry, the title of this is a business case. That in itself is a business case.
Yeah, it is, and I think I have even an example from a Danish company called Scandic Hotels, a Scandinavian company, sorry, and they have also tried to work with, you know, bringing, you know, putting employees in front on social media and letting them, you know, talk instead of Scandic's normally corporate content, and they can just see how well it performs compared to traditional marketing content. And I think,
and I've interviewed Danielle Guzman from Mercer on here, and I got her to admit. So Mercer is a brand. It's, you know, the website, people know the name. It sells a certain amount of stuff. If they can inspire their employees to share on social, that will sell 3 to 4 more times than the brand itself.
Yeah.
So the question to you is, how do we inspire our employees to do that?
Yeah, good question. I think there are 2 ways to look at this, because one thing is that you want people to do stuff. You want people to act as advocates for your company, and you can have an employee advocacy program where you try to educate people to do that, which is great. But there's also the other way where you can say, you need to have a great employee experience at work before people would actually want to act as advocates. So which way should you choose? Because these things, they go hand in hand in my eyes. So I think that is sometimes I think these 2 things are not balanced right. So you try to force the employee advocacy part a bit too much and want people to share stuff, while the employee advocate experience side is not really, you know, it might not be a great company to work at, but you really want people to share stuff and they get points or whatever they make. You make a game out of it. But how to inspire people to become advocates? I would say the best way in my eyes is actually, you know, produce, and even you could either produce some great content that makes people shine on social networks, where they can see that this is something that, if I share this, it's a bit noisy here. If I share this, it's actually positively, you know, spilling over to my personal brand. And that's how it should be, I think. And that's where, you know, when we talk about employee advocacy, that we might be struggling a bit today, is actually to getting that right. So how can we produce some great content that people want to share, that not only reflects positively on the brand, but also positively on the employee? That's the biggest challenge we have right now, I think.
And how do you create these advocates? How do you make sure that you've got these inspired people to want to share?
I mean, one of the things is actually to get people, you know, to ask people these people who really want to act as advocates, to ask them to join or invite them into a training program, and educate them in how these social platforms actually work, and what to do and what not to do. That's one way to do it.
I interviewed Mike Klein on here, and he has a view that maybe not my generation, but younger generations actually, and I'm going to quote him, they actually expect a culture of interplay between sharing, creating, and sharing with each other. Lots of people now are used to using social media. If you take the recent Simon Kemp figures, you know, there are now more people on social media than not on social media. Yeah. And I think we get used to, you know, you shared an article this morning telling people to come here. People then engage with that and had a conversation, and we've got people watching that just by putting that something on social. Yeah. And I think there's an expectation that people now actually, I think there are people in the company, in companies that actually now expect that, and they think it's strange that their companies are not giving them that.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I've even heard about companies, big consultancy companies. I think even in Denmark, who also have social selling courses and so on, but they don't allow their employees to be active on social media, which is very astounding, I would say. And I think it becomes more and more normal, and I think that is one of the things we should be aware of in the communication space as well, is that this might actually move from an opportunity to an expectation, or what you could call an opportunity where you can create an advantage, for yourself, to actually just be the new normal.
But and is that what we're seeing in high performance teams now? There's an expectation that you should be active on social.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Both. I mean, I think when you look at it as a high performance teams internally in an organization, I would say it's also about being able to use internal social media as well. Because the way we collaborate has also changed, the way we communicate to each other. High performance teams, I was thinking about and a thing that I worked with in I think it was in ALA actually, when we look at it in the communication space, so how can we actually help teams become better communicators or become better at inspiring people? We created when ALA went through a large transformational program when I was working there, we decided to establish a top 300 group where the top 300 managers they could become members. And the aim with this group was actually to not only inform them about what was going on, but actually making them able to inspire their teams with some great things about this transformational program. And we used, we used small videos, bite-sized clips where we explained some complex, or where people, a vice president from the finance department, he just explained the new budgeting process in like 30 seconds. Which was totally easy for them afterwards to go back to their teams and draw it, instead of having these long conversations or 10 slides about how do we budget in the future. Yeah. And that is actually a way to use social media internally to help or to inspire people. And in the end, that will, I really believe that drives some performance in the end, engagement.
Well, my company, we use Slack. We run the business.
Yeah.
I know in my inbox I only have 2 emails, and that's not a boast. It's just that I don't deal with email.
No,
I only deal with the outside world with email. Yeah. I like telling the story. My mother's 82, and I got her off email, and she complains about, there's all these old people that want to email me with and stuff like that. Why don't they use social media? And I kind of feel the same.
Yeah. So I think. If we go back to the 3 things that I was talking about earlier, where are we going to and from? Where are we coming from? Where are we going to? I think I was talking about authentic content, which was becoming humanizing or human content. And then what was it more? I was thinking about from corporate. There was one more thing I think I forgot to mention actually. But I can't. It was. Let me see if I have it somewhere. It was just. So we had.
So Jonas, just so people know, they can ask questions if they want to.
Yeah, of course.
So I just noticed one of my friends, Rob Wilmot, has joined, and he usually asks a question. So,
okay.
Hi Rob, you can go ahead and ask questions. It's not a.
The last thing I was actually talking about, or would like to talk about, is actually that we go away from the expectation that people, they read our stuff, so that they actually take action based on what we put out there. Because I think that's also important, and I think that is also challenging, because it challenges our current mindsets about how to actually develop communication in the future. And obviously it comes back to the inspirational pieces, that we want to inspire people to act instead of just sending out some information.
Well, I mean, if you take a brochure is just there to provide information.
Yeah.
Same with the website. And what people don't understand is that they need to create something that's action-based.
Exactly.
What we're looking to do is, if we're going to create content internally, we need people to share it.
Yeah.
If people are sharing something externally, we want people to do something. It may be that what they do is amplify it.
Yeah.
But what we need them to do is to do something.
Yeah. And internally, it's always, we always have to ask ourselves, what is it that we want people to do when they've read this? For instance, if it's still old school, communication and information that we send out. So what is the next action? What is the next action we want people to do? And can we measure that in some way? I think that's really important. So that's where we're heading, actually. I think it's more inspiring people to act and making sure that the communication that we try to develop or publish, or the approach that we have, is actually human and not corporate.
Yes. Sorry to mention Mike Klein. He talks about the Abraham Lincoln method, which is what you do is Abraham Lincoln said, to win an election, what you need to do is you go out and you find your advocates. Yeah. You motivate those advocates.
Yeah.
But as we all know in elections, agreeing with somebody isn't enough. You've got to motivate them to go out and vote.
Yeah.
And I love the metaphor about, what we're trying to do here is motivate employees. Yeah. And what we're trying to get them to be is not just advocates, but to do something about it.
Yeah. And I think that's also where Jeppe's point becomes really interesting about the influencers, because one of the things we might miss out on today is that you might not be able to inspire people to act if you're the CEO of the company. But
so thanks, Rob, for the question. We'll come to it in a moment. So just to explain to people, the law or the that's been put forward is that 3% of the people drive 85% of the change.
Yeah.
So but the problem is you don't know who those 3% of the people are.
No, you don't. I mean, you could go to Jeppe and ask Innovisor to do an assessment or a network analysis, as it's called, where you can get an indication of who are these influencers actually. So that would help you, I think. And then but you obviously can't enforce these influencers to convince people to get them to convince them about your stuff. But I think that is definitely important knowledge to have, and it will definitely also challenge the current approach to both communication strategies and change management strategies and everything that you do today. Because normally it's top down.
There's a famous video that went viral about an employee. I don't know which fast food restaurant it was, but he basically he was working double shifts. Mm-hmm. So rather than going home and have a shower, what he did was he had a bath in one of the sinks in the restaurant, and his friend videoed it and they put it up on social media, and it went viral. Mm-hmm. You can imagine, the organization hated it because they had to clean the restaurant, they had to do all kinds of things, and the chairman of the CEO of the company basically put out a video on YouTube, and nobody watched it.
Yeah, that's terrible.
and he thought that he was going to put out a video and it would go viral, and what he didn't and their team didn't understand is that nobody's interested in what the CEO had to say. And if you have a CEO that's not on social media, they're not influential within the organization.
No,
this is the interesting thing about the 3% driving the 85% of the change. So in the research, of those 3%, they are usually introverts. Mm. Because introverted people usually listen and they don't give answers.
Yeah.
They may not. There's a tension between people who are new to the business and been in the business a long time. Mm-hmm. Because the people in the business generally are trying to build a network, while the people in the business have been in the business a long time don't need to, because they already think they have a network.
Yeah.
And all of these things have an interplay against who is actually influential within the business.
Yes.
And as I say, it's not necessarily the leadership team.
No. And it's interesting, isn't it? I think interesting and maybe also very scary for a CEO or the current leadership team to actually accept this as a fact that they are not the ones who can drive the change. I think that is really, really a scary thought, and I think maybe this is also one of the reasons why, why we don't see this, or still are discussing employee advocacy and all these things as something that is only emerging because it's not something people like to discuss, because it's challenging their own ways of working and their competencies. A lot of CEOs, they don't have the competencies to be on social media today, and they don't think it's necessary because that's not the way they've been working early on. And it's totally contradictory to the things that they might be telling their employees, that they should be able to change and being able to transform and all these kind of things.
I mean, one of the great examples of where CEOs on social media is working is Bernard Looney at BP.
Yeah,
one of my team actually contacted him and said, "It's not you, it's a PR department." Mm-hmm. He actually responded. He said, "No, it is me." He said, "I do have a team working for me." Yeah. But he said, "It is me, and I've answered this myself."
Yeah, that's really interesting to see these kind of CEOs. And I mean, we also had a conversation about that last week, I think, about a post that was being made in Denmark.
Explain that, because there was somebody working at Aldi on the team.
Yeah, and Aldi in Denmark who was working in on the floor, mainly scanning items, and she asked the question that, or she wrote out on LinkedIn that she's heard that she had to be on LinkedIn to network and all these kind of things, sharing interesting stuff, but she really didn't know what to share, because I mean, what am I supposed to share, that I'm scanning items the whole day? And then you can see the top answer was from Pierre Bank, from the competitor, the CEO of the competitor from Salling Group, which is the huge retail company.
He used to be the CEO of Tesco, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, yeah. Who then answered that share something about your experiences with customers. That's definitely something we could be interested on and learn something about. And just a great example of how social media works today, and how, I mean, he's gotten so much attention and goodwill, I would assume, Pierre Bank, for this little message that he sent out there. I think it was like 70 or 80 times or something. It's just, it takes like, what does it take for a CEO to do this? 2 minutes of his time in the evening. And I mean, it generates, significantly more attention than any marketing campaign would do.
So we have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Rob asks, how do you deal with colleagues, employees who don't want to share your content and keep their social networks for private use?
Yeah.
How do you incentivize
them? Basically, I would say that I would never, I would actually be aware of that. This is still something people should do based on their own free will. That's the first thing that's really important, because I don't want to capitalize on their personal brands. The personal brands and social media, they own that. And I mean, that's maybe also something that companies should be very aware of and respect, actually. So that's the first thing. So if we take that as the foundation, then we have to think about, what can we do to actually strengthen the personal brands of our people. I think that's the next thing. So that's the way to incentivize people. I think it's to incentivize them so that they can see that what I put out there is actually strengthening my personal brand.
I was speaking to a CEO of a social company.
Yeah.
And he said we're very social. And I said, well, you're not. He said, we this, and I said, well, look, here's some of your employees. And he said, well, surely they know how to share on social. I said, well, have you shown them? And he said, no. He said, I assumed that they did, because they were generally less than 50 years old. And he said, and I said, so if you've not shown them, how do they know what to do? And I said, if you're not doing it yourself, how do they know that they're allowed to do it, because you're not leading?
Yeah. That's really important. And I think I have seen some companies in Denmark, some large companies there, where you have a very social CEO, but nothing below that. But so there's no, he's the only one who's actually really engaged on social, but it's not a strategy in the company. It's just something he is.
And I would answer Rob's question as well, saying that at Mercer, Danielle Guzman is only expecting to get 10% of the employees. And that's 3% of the people she's expecting to be advocates, who are going to be super on social. 77% of the people will share corporate content, and that's it. They're just not expecting anything more than that.
That's I think that sounds like a reasonable expectation, and it also sounds like it would be a lot, even if it's 3%.
Well, they've got 50,000 people, so that's still 5,000 people. You know, so.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not. I don't think it's for everyone. It is still you know, something people can do if they like, and they can see an advantage to do for themselves also.
So Anders has asked the question: could you see a future where employees are given bonuses based on how many views they get on posts that mention their organization on LinkedIn?
No, I would not like that. That would be a terrible situation.
I am to agree. Yeah.
I mean, you can buy likes and buy followers for like €5 or something on some obscure places in Ukraine, or engage in engagement pods or whatever you like. That would be a terrible development, I would say.
I think it's down to the your ability to empower.
Yeah, exactly.
To do it.
Yeah.
And that's about having a proper change program for people to understand what's in it for them to actually want to be involved. And some people may say, I don't want to do it, which is fine. But other people will say, I want some of this. And they'll step up. Yeah,
I agree. So I think it's really interesting to see where this takes us in terms of, you know, what does that mean for the corporate comms department in general? If we talk about corporate comms or whatever, if we would like to stay in the silos, because that's also a thing that I believe is challenged. I don't even know what to call corporate comms in the future, because marketing and corporate comms and, you know, all these kind of things, and sales or whatever, all these kind of silos, they might not exist in the future. And I think right now we see employee advocacy as something that is something people find a bit interesting, and then they play a little bit around with it. But it's not like I see a lot of companies using this as a you know, as a strategy for the company, where they take it serious and they say, this is really something we believe in that drives some sales for us. This is really essential. We have to, you know, this is something where we put in a director of the employee advocacy program, or whatever we call it. That's not where we are yet, I think.
I know a company that gets business through employee advocacy, but we're not here to talk about me, are we?
No, but you're welcome to come up with a great example, because I really you know, I really like the thought of employee advocacy, but I can also see all these, you know, all these dangers where we give people a tool and they say, great, that's a great way to promote all the kind of things that we've always done, just with a new you know, in a new way.
I've only ever had 2 problems in 4 years.
Yeah.
And one problem, they went and deleted the tweets, and it was sort of.
Oh yeah, that's not what I mean. Well, that's not what I mean by you know, the dangers of people you know, sharing stuff. That's not what I think of. It's more like, is employee advocacy about, you know, sharing corporate stuff, or is it actually about strengthening people's personal brands? I mean, it's a mindset thing, I think. So how do we make sure that when you talk about employee advocacy, that you're actually looking into, you know, how can we use how can we strengthen the personal brands of our people, instead of saying how can we get them to share all this kind of marketing stuff that we always been doing, right?
People buy people.
What? People buy from people. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And that's the approach.
You know, a brochure doesn't create a conversation.
No, exactly.
What we want, what creates sales are conversations.
Yeah.
And we can create conversations on social.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. You know, I was talking this morning about using social within the procurement department and supply chain.
Yeah,
that's a way of getting additional, you know, allowing organizations to get the right suppliers that they need right now.
Yeah.
The suppliers may be on lockdown. There may be local suppliers. There may be a better supplier that gives you better quality, lower price in Indonesia. I don't know. But until people get on social and actually start asking the questions and crowdsourcing the responses that they want, they don't know. And so this is not just using social for selling stuff. It's also about buying stuff, recruiting people.
But then let me ask you a question. Do you think that we have the? Do you think that people in organizations have the right capabilities in the departments to work with that right now, or what do we need to do?
I think that people have to be trained, because someone was telling me that during lockdown they rolled out Teams, and all they got was an email. Now I know that Teams is, and a link. You now got Teams. I know that Teams is a fairly easy thing to use, but this is a process. This is about your company and ultimately your brand, and the fact that people could go online and do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
We have training around diversity and inclusion. We have health and safety training. We have all kinds of training about saying this is what good behavior is and this is what bad behavior is.
Yeah.
Social media needs to be treated exactly the same.
Yeah, just like
to come from why Tim Hughes should want to feel that they want to get up in the morning and post something.
Yeah. And it's I think back to communications part. The communications part. I mean, leaders, they are trained in in handling press, for instance, in the media. So why aren't they trained in being on social? I think that would be a natural next step for the communications department to look at. Is just makes totally sense to me to say, why aren't they on social? I see so many leaders today on not being on social media. I've just trained a couple of them this week actually. And it's just like it's interesting to see that they seem some just don't seem to know what to do, and what's the value of being on social.
I think it's endemic across across business.
Yeah,
because a number of people haven't grown. I usually do the Uber test, which is I ask people, have you ever used an Uber?
Yeah.
Because it's so simple to use.
Yeah.
So last year, we did a tour. We went from San Francisco, got an Uber, went up through Seattle, got into Vancouver, and I don't have Uber. So I came out of the train station and I said, how'd you get a taxi? They said, you get in that queue over there. What? And stand in the rain. And there aren't any taxis. They said, that's how it works in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you're joking. Yeah. It's like, and that's the thing. That's the difference. It's a difference that it's transformed the way that we work. And the same as much as our expectations is it's instant. I can get it now. And that's the thing that social provides us with, is the ability to talk to whoever we want to. I tagged Bernard Looney on a post just today. I don't mind, and I don't really care if he responds. But the fact of the matter is there's no hierarchy anymore.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how it can drive sales, but also, brand awareness or whatever we talk about. I think it's when I look at corporate comms, I think it still strikes me that let's say take external social media is being viewed as very often a place where you can still publish press releases, and internal social media is still a very unstructured place to be, where people are just doing stuff, but you're not using it strategically. So let's say, like the top 300 management group that I talked about earlier, or if you have people on maternity leave, for instance, that's a big issue for people. They are leaving the company for, like, in Denmark it's like 6 or 9 months. So how can we use internal social media strategically to just stay connected and connect the right people with each other? I think that's something we underestimate today, and there's still a huge value in being strategic on these issues. And we are still not, or a lot of people are still using this as a tactical approach.
So René makes the point that for a good employee advocacy, leaders need to trust their employees. The trust doesn't exist in the old mindset, and I totally agree with him.
Yeah.
And that something has to change, which is either you have to build trust, or you need to get rid of those, either the leaders, or you have to get rid of the employees.
Yeah, and also again, it's back to the employee experience. So, what's your experience at work? So, are you going to be killed if you share something on social media, or are you actually being
Well, I used to work for a US company that if you shared anything on social media, you would be fired.
Yeah.
And then the next day they said you can share something on social media, and I thought, it's a trick, isn't it? And then the next day you're going to say I'm going to be fired. So why would I share anything on social media? And I think that's the thing. Yeah. The leaders don't trust the employees, and the employees don't trust the. I talked to one marketing leader and I said, why don't you put your salespeople on social? He said, oh, we don't trust them.
It's, yeah, I think you could also say that the way that people behave on social media from certain companies, it's also a result of the culture. So let's take another a different example on Southwest Airlines. They have these funny sometimes announcements before takeoff, which generates a huge additional revenue actually for Southwest because the customers become more loyal. And that was something United Airlines, they found out, and then they sent out email to their employees that this was also allowed right now from now on. That's not the way to inspire people to do this, isn't it? It's again
so
back to
at school. I used to have to wear a school uniform.
Yeah.
And what the rule was that even though you were outside of the school grounds, if you had the school uniform on, you had to obey school rules. So if you were caught shoplifting and you had school uniform on, there was you could be punished within the school, and that was what the rule was.
Yeah.
And it's kind of similar with social media, which is that people don't understand that if they don't, people are on social media. There's now more people on social media than not. You can't stop people, your employees being on it, and you can't control them. What you have to do is you need to put in limits, and you need to explain what is good behavior and what is bad behavior. And I see people writing things on LinkedIn, and it's like, when GDPR was coming up, people were writing things like, I don't care about GDPR. I'm actually going to carry on spamming people. And it's like, but your company actually has a privacy policy on its website that says you can't spam people.
Mm-hmm.
And what people were not realizing was that when they talk on social media, they still talk based on the rules and the belief systems of the company they work for.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But that isn't being explained. It goes back to you train people on health and safety, diversity, inclusion. We all know how we should be acting, but we don't train people on social media, and it's still seen as the Wild West. And there's a lot of companies that I'm surprised haven't fallen foul.
I agree.
And because the first reaction is, well, we'll stop people using it. You can't do that anymore. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, we talk a lot about social media today when we talk about today in this talk. But I think it's also so. I mean, it's so crucial because it's so transforming for everything that we do. Also, especially in communications today. And I think it's not always that I fear that that's something that people get. They don't understand the transformative or the transformation that's necessary to do social. What they do is mostly do some smaller incremental changes, and maybe that's what we see right now, where people try some new things like employee advocacy and so on. But you really need to look at this as a transformative thing, and that's where strategy comes in, and it is something that needs to be taken seriously in the way we do our communication strategy on all these things, because it's a different way to look at it today.
So Jonas, we're at 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So was there anything else that you particularly wanted to add to the conversation?
I think we talk about, how to take things from information to inspiration. And I think one of the things, just to wrap it up, I think, that's also why social media is so important, is that the way to inspire people, it is one way is to do it is that it's people who know people, they can inspire each other. It's much more difficult for people that you don't know to inspire you. So you have to create some kind of connection. That's why that's after we've been talking a lot and have had a lot of conversations on social media. I get to know you, and I'm being inspired by you, and I think that's why social media has such a huge power to inspire people. That's why
know you, like you, trust you. It's the way.
Exactly. Yeah. Because trust is the next thing. So who do you actually trust in companies? I mean, that's the people around you and the leader that you know and so on, and not necessarily the CEO. That's why when we work in corporate comms and so on, we should be very aware of that. Top-down communication is not the most efficient way to do communications. It's just a way to put out content or information that nobody wants to read and nobody remembers. So if you really want to drive some change or really want to have an impact, I mean, you have to look at influencers and looking at people who can actually inspire each other. And that's really important. I think that is that's important to get on this team talk as well. Yeah.
Good. Jonas, it's been fantastic talking to you. Thank you for sharing your insight, and thank you to everybody that's asked questions and listened in, because originally it was 20 minutes, but we've doubled that to 40. Well, I don't mind if it's interesting. I just let it roll,
Okay, great.
We're going to get insight from it, and we didn't lose a lot of the people watching.
No, I can see that. No.
And so I appreciate them hanging around and investing some time in that and listening to this. So remind everybody where they can get hold of you.
So email, it's Jonas, Jonas, @inversus, inversus.dk, and Twitter it's Bladt, BLADT 77, and LinkedIn is just my name, and you've got me. I'm the only one around whose name is Jonas Bladt Hansen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for today, and thank you for that you're actually on holiday today. I know.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
And thank you for taking some time out of your holiday.
And
and thanks to everybody for making comments. Really appreciate it. And I'll get it on YouTube soon.
Fantastic.
Thanks. Have a good day. Bye.
Yeah,
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Bye.